The biting North Sea wind whipped against Dr. Eleanor Vance's face as she watched the grey waves crash against the Norfolk coast. Chilled, yet with a burning determination in her eyes, Eleanor, a marine archaeologist renowned for her tenacity and skepticism, was there due to an unusual invitation. A small fishing community had reported something strange, something that defied logical explanation. It wasn't just shipwreck remains, nor unusual rock formations. They spoke of structures, of streets, of an entire town, glimpsed on exceptionally calm days. For most, it would be a local legend, an echo of the many myths about lands swallowed by the ocean. But the persistence of the reports and the detail of the descriptions, intact arches, complex masonry, even signs of petrified plant life, piqued Eleanor's scientific curiosity. She had arrived with her small team, composed of Ben Carter, an experienced diver and her right-hand man, and Sarah Jensen, a young oceanographer with a natural talent for data analysis and an infectious optimism. That morning, the sea's mood was particularly cruel. Heavy clouds hung low, promising more storms. Ben adjusted equipment on the deck of the Triton, the small research vessel they had rented. Sarah, meanwhile, was poring over nautical charts, trying to identify current patterns that might explain the fishermen's accounts. "Looks like the sea doesn't want to tell us its secrets today, Doctor," Ben commented, his voice muffled by the wind. Eleanor nodded, her eyes fixed on the horizon. "It always guards its best secrets tightly, Ben. But this time, I feel we're closer than ever to unlocking that secret." The truth was, something different pulsed in the air. A sense of anticipation, almost reverence, hung over the small fishing village. The elders spoke of the sunken city with a mix of fear and fascination, stories passed down through generations. They told tales of a people who lived in harmony with the sea until an inscrutable fury swallowed them. Eleanor, despite her skeptical nature, couldn't ignore the glimmer in the eyes of these storytellers, the conviction in their voices. On the first dive, visibility was terrible. The murky, cold water swallowed the light, turning the underwater world into a grey-green blur. Ben and Eleanor descended, illuminating the abyss with their high-powered flashlights, hope diminishing with each meter. Suddenly, Ben's flashlight caught something. A straight, distinct line which could not be natural. A wall. Adrenaline surged through Eleanor's veins. They were close. Very close. What followed were hours of preliminary mapping, the team working tirelessly to plot the first coordinates of something that challenged the known history of the region. It was a discovery that had the potential to rewrite books, to change the perception of ancient civilization in England. But with the discovery came a sense that something deeper, perhaps darker, awaited them in the depths. Enjoyed the first chapter? Do not miss any details of this incredible journey and follow the mysteries that Eleanor and her team will unravel. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. The initial mapping confirmed their wildest hopes. An ancient settlement lay beneath the waves, remarkably preserved by the frigid North Sea. The first days of exploration were a blur of intense activity, a race against the unpredictable weather. Eleanor, Ben and Sarah meticulously documented every detail. They found paved streets, foundations of buildings, and even a partially intact public square. The scale was far beyond anything they had anticipated. This wasn't just a village, but a significant town. One afternoon, during a particularly clear dive, Eleanor swam along what appeared to be a main thoroughfare. The sensation was surreal. It felt as if she was gliding through a ghost town, frozen in time. The silence of the deep was broken only by the hum of her rebreather and the distant creak of the Triton above. She paused at a large, flat stone, its surface surprisingly smooth. Brushing away layers of sediment, she revealed intricate carvings, symbols she couldn't immediately identify, but that hinted at a complex culture. back on the surface, the initial euphoria began to give way to a growing sense of unease. The preservation was almost too perfect. There were no signs of catastrophic damage, no indication of a violent storm or a massive earthquake. It was as if the town had simply, silently, slipped beneath the waves. Sarah, analyzing sonar data, pointed out peculiar anomalies. "The seabed here isn't a gradual slope, Dr. Vance," she explained, gesturing at a complex data display. "It's almost like a clean cut, as if a section of land just dropped straight down." Ben, ever practical, offered a more mundane explanation. "Could be a massive sinkhole, or a geological fault line nobody knew about." Eleanor considered this, but her instincts told her there was more to it. The symbols on the stone bothered her. They didn't resemble any known Anglo-Saxon or Roman script. This civilization, whatever it was, predated established timelines. The questions piled up. Who were these people? How did their town end up on the seabed in such an intact state? And why had there been no historical record of such a significant settlement? The deeper they delved, the more layers of mystery they uncovered, hinting at a past far more intricate and enigmatic than any textbook suggested. As the team continued their dives, the town slowly began to yield its secrets. They discovered tools made of an unfamiliar alloy, resilient and resistant to corrosion, unlike anything of that era. Pottery fragments showed unique decorative patterns, further solidifying the idea that this was an unknown culture. Eleanor spent hours in the small makeshift lab on the Triton, meticulously cleaning and analyzing every artifact brought up from the depths. Her initial scientific detachment was slowly giving way to a profound sense of wonder and a deep desire to understand these lost people. One day, Ben surfaced with a find that sent a jolt through the entire team, a small, intricately carved tablet. Unlike the larger stone Eleanor had found, this one was made of the same unknown alloy. On it, a series of symbols were etched, resembling a form of hieroglyphics. Sarah immediately began cross-referencing them with ancient scripts and linguistic databases, but nothing matched. "It's like nothing I've ever seen," she admitted, her voice a mix of frustration and excitement. "It's not Celtic, not Roman, not even early Germanic. It's alien." Eleanor felt a thrill run down her spine. Alien wasn't a term she used lightly in archaeology, but it captured the feeling perfectly. This wasn't just a lost town, it was a lost civilization. The sheer novelty of the discovery, however, brought with it a new set of challenges. How do you interpret a language with no known parallels? How do you understand a culture without any comparative data? The weather, a constant adversary, began to turn more hostile. Storms rolled in from the North Sea with increasing frequency, limiting their dive windows. The pressure mounted, not just from the elements, but from the realization of the monumental nature of their find. News of their unusual discoveries was beginning to filter back to the mainland, attracting unwanted attention from media and rival institutions. Eleanor knew they were racing against time, not just against the sea, but against the inevitable scramble for control over this unprecedented archaeological treasure. The weight of discovery, while exhilarating, was also isolating. They were on the precipice of something immense, and the feeling of being truly alone with such a secret was both thrilling and daunting. The discovery of the unique alloy and the undecipherable tablet ignited a frenzy of activity on the Triton. Sarah, brilliant and relentless, spent days trying to crack the code of the symbols, fueled by strong coffee and an insatiable curiosity. Ben, meanwhile, focused on expanding their mapping efforts, revealing more of the town's layout and its surprisingly advanced architecture. Eleanor felt a surge of professional pride watching her team, but a growing undercurrent of doubt began to tug at her. The perfect preservation of the town continued to baffle her. No signs of erosion consistent with centuries underwater, no significant marine growth on many of the structures. It was as if the town had been submerged just yesterday, not millennia ago. The lack of any historical mention of such a significant settlement in a well-documented region like England was also a glaring anomaly. Her scientific mind, always seeking logical explanations, was struggling to reconcile these inconsistencies. "Doctor." "Vance!" Sarah called out one evening, her voice strained from hours of staring at symbols. "I think I found a pattern, a recurring symbol. It looks like a stylized wave or perhaps a ripple." Eleanor leaned closer, her interest piqued. "What do you think it signifies?" Sarah hesitated. In many ancient cultures, water symbols often relate to deities or creation or even destruction. But this, it's too specific, almost like a diagram. Their conversation was interrupted by a terse radio call from the mainland. News of their discoveries had leaked, and a representative from the Ministry of Culture was demanding an immediate detailed report and threatening to seize control of the expedition. Eleanor's heart sank. The political machinations were beginning. This wasn't just about discovery anymore. It was about control, prestige, and the power that came with rewriting history. The pressure weighed heavily on Eleanor. She valued scientific integrity above all else, and the nagging questions about the town's immaculate state, combined with the new bureaucratic hurdles, created a suffocating sense of unease. She looked out at the turbulent sea, wondering if the ocean's secrets were not meant to be uncovered, or if some truths were simply too extraordinary for the world to accept. The initial excitement was now tinged with the cold reality of consequences. She knew their findings would be met with skepticism, perhaps even ridicule, by those who clung to established historical narratives. Don't let this epic mystery slip away. Hit that subscribe button and join us as we dive deeper into the secrets of Britain's Atlantis. You won't want to miss what comes next. The news of the ministry's intervention cast a shadow over the Triton. Eleanor knew they had a narrow window to gather as much conclusive evidence as possible before being forced to halt their operations or share their findings prematurely. The team doubled their efforts, each member feeling the urgency. Ben focused on precise laser scanning to create a 3D model of the entire submerged town, hoping to reveal patterns missed by human eyes. Sarah, driven by an almost obsessive zeal, continued her work on the tablet, convinced it held the key to the town's past. One particularly long and frustrating night, Sarah, surrounded by crumpled notes and empty coffee cups, let out a triumphant cry. "I've got something. The recurring wave symbol. It's not a diagram of a wave. It's a sequence, a progression." She pointed to a series of etched lines beside the symbol. "I think it represents a frequency." Eleanor's mind raced. Frequency? In what context? Are you suggesting they had knowledge of acoustics, or something more complex? "I don't know," Sarah admitted, her eyes wide with a mixture of exhaustion and exhilaration. "But paired with other symbols, it seems to describe a method of manipulation, of the environment, or of matter itself." Ben, who had been listening intently, interjected, "Manipulation? What kind of manipulation are we talking about? Like moving things, or preventing things from decaying?" The idea hung in the air, heavy with implications. The impossible preservation, the lack of erosion, the clean cut of the seabed. What if this ancient civilization had developed a technology not based on mechanics or electronics as we understand them, but on principles of resonant frequencies? A way to stabilize structures, to resist the passage of time, perhaps even to influence geological events. It sounded like science fiction, yet the evidence before them was undeniable. The concept was so far beyond conventional archaeology that it was almost terrifying. The answers they sought were not merely historical, they bordered on the scientific impossible. The hypothesis of frequency manipulation became the team's new, electrifying focus. Eleanor, initially skeptical, found herself increasingly swayed by Sarah's compelling arguments and the mounting circumstantial evidence. They began to re-examine all their findings through this new lens. The unique alloy of the tools, previously unexplained, now seemed designed to resonate with specific frequencies. The precise, almost sterile way the town had sunk, as if lowered gently rather than engulfed violently, also began to make a terrifying kind of sense. Their urgency intensified. The Ministry of Culture was now sending daily communiques, demanding their immediate return and threatening legal action. Eleanor knew they had only a few more days, perhaps hours, before they would be forced to comply. They needed a definitive proof. One afternoon, Ben surfaced from a deep dive, his face pale beneath his dry suit. "Doctor," he stammered, pulling off his mask, "you need to see this." He held up a small, perfectly spherical object no bigger than a golf ball, crafted from the same unknown alloy. "I found it near what looks like the town's central plaza. It was sitting on a pedestal, and it was humming." Eleanor took the sphere. It was cool to the touch, but a faint, almost imperceptible vibration resonated from within. Sarah, rushing over, immediately recognized symbols on its surface that matched sequences from the tablet. "It's a device," she whispered, her voice filled with awe, "a frequency emitter." The revelation was staggering. This wasn't just a lost town, it was a lost civilization that had achieved a level of scientific understanding far beyond their presumed era. The implication was profound. They had the technology to manipulate their environment, perhaps even to preserve their very existence against the forces of nature. The Atlantis myth, for centuries dismissed as fantasy, was taking on a chilling new reality. But why had they gone silent? And what had happened to them if they possessed such power? The discovery of the humming sphere opened more questions than it answered, pushing them further into an unknown scientific frontier. The discovery of the humming sphere was the game changer. It was the physical proof they desperately needed, yet it also deepened the mystery. Eleanor, Ben, and Sarah meticulously studied it, but without a power source or a deeper understanding of its operation, it remained largely inert. Sarah, however, believed the tablet held the key to activating it, or at least understanding its purpose. Days bled into nights. The weather deteriorated further, and the Triton was buffeted by increasingly violent waves. The ministry's threats escalated, now including direct orders for their return, backed by the implicit threat of naval intervention. They were running out of time. One storm-lashed evening, as the boat pitched wildly, Sarah made another breakthrough. "The symbols aren't just instructions," she exclaimed, pointing to a new sequence on the tablet. "They're a warning. It's a sequence describing a catastrophic event, and a desperate attempt to mitigate it." Her fingers traced the symbols, now illuminated by a single flickering lantern. "This symbol here," she indicated, "it represents instability. And this one paired with the frequency sequence, it's a desperate measure, a way to lower the entire town, controlled, into the sea, to protect it from something cataclysmic happening on land." Eleanor stared, dumbfounded. "They intentionally sank their own city to save it?" "It appears so," Sarah confirmed, her voice barely a whisper. "But something went wrong. This last sequence, it's incomplete, or perhaps the power failed. It's a description of the final moments of the resonance failing, leaving them trapped." The realization hit Eleanor with the force of a physical blow. This wasn't a natural disaster that swallowed a town. It was a desperate act of preservation that failed, leaving a perfectly preserved tomb. The people of this Britain's Atlantis weren't drowned victims of a flood. They were trapped within their own, ultimately futile, attempt to survive. The weight of their fate, spanning millennia, descended upon Eleanor, adding a profound human tragedy to the scientific marvel. The true horror wasn't in the sea swallowing the city, but in the deliberate final choice of its inhabitants and the unforeseen, permanent consequences. Are you on the edge of your seat? The story of Britain's Atlantis is far from over. Make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss a single chapter of this gripping archaeological thriller. The revelation of the town's intentional sinking, a desperate act of self-preservation gone tragically wrong, left the team in a state of solemn reflection. The humming sphere took on a new, heartbreaking significance. It was not just a device, but a testament to a civilization's final, desperate gamble. The ministry's demands grew more insistent, their deadlines tighter. Eleanor knew they had to make a decision: share their findings immediately, or attempt one last, risky dive to confirm their theories and potentially find more conclusive evidence of the catastrophe. The weather forecast was grim. The worst storm in decades was approaching, set to hit the Norfolk coast within 24 hours. "We can't dive in that," Ben stated, his voice tight with concern. "It would be suicide." Eleanor paced the cramped cabin, her mind racing. "We don't have a choice, Ben. If we leave now, they'll seize everything, our research, the artifacts, the truth. This civilization deserves to have its story told properly, not twisted by bureaucracy." Sarah, though visibly exhausted, agreed. "We need to go back for the core, the heart of their system. If it exists, it could confirm everything." The core was a theory Sarah had developed, a central device, far more powerful than the sphere that would have orchestrated the town's descent. Based on patterns in the tablet's warning sequences, she believed its location was indicated deep within the largest structure they had mapped, what appeared to be a public assembly hall. Despite Ben's reservations, a sense of shared purpose solidified. They prepared for their most dangerous dive yet, a race against the clock and the approaching tempest. The Triton bobbed violently on the waves, the wind howling its disapproval. As they donned their gear, the weight of their decision was palpable. This wasn't just about discovery anymore, it was about honoring the legacy of a lost people and proving to the world a truth so extraordinary it would shake the foundations of history. The stakes were higher than ever, and the risk terrifyingly real. Under a sky bruised with storm clouds and a sea churned into a maelstrom, Eleanor, Ben, and Sarah embarked on their final desperate dive. The Triton was barely holding its own against the waves, but they knew this was their last chance. Visibility was horrendous, the water filled with swirling sediment, and the currents were treacherous. They navigated by memory and the faint outlines of their earlier mapping data, each breath echoing loudly in their ears. They reached the submerged assembly hall, its massive entrance now looking like a gaping maw in the gloom. Inside, the silence was profound, broken only by the muffled sounds of the storm raging above. They moved cautiously, their powerful lights cutting through the murky water, illuminating intricate carvings and what looked like control panels made of the familiar gleaming alloy. Sarah pointed to a recess in the floor. "The tablet mentioned a central chamber. I think it's beneath us." Working quickly, they cleared away centuries of sediment and debris, revealing a circular chamber. In its center, nestled within a complex array of conduits and smaller humming spheres, sat the core. It was a magnificent crystalline structure, pulsing with a faint internal light, unlike anything they had ever witnessed. Its design was both ancient and impossibly futuristic. As Eleanor reached out to touch it, a sudden, powerful tremor rocked the entire structure. The storm above was taking its toll. Alarms blared from their dive computers, structural integrity warnings. The ancient town, after millennia of silent slumber, was finally succumbing to the forces it had once tried to defy. Dust and debris rained down from the ceiling. "We have to go," Ben yelled through his comms, his voice laced with urgency. "The structure's collapsing!" Eleanor hesitated for a moment, torn between the overwhelming desire to study the core and the imminent danger. She knew she couldn't take the entire structure, but she spotted something crucial. A small, detached crystalline shard, identical in material to the core, lying amidst the rubble. It was small enough to carry, a tangible piece of this extraordinary technology. Snatching it, she signaled to Ben and Sarah. They began their perilous ascent, leaving the ancient core and its secrets to the depths, the crashing sounds of the collapsing city echoing their rapid departure. The price of knowledge was steep, and they had just paid it with the narrowest of escapes. They broke the surface amidst crashing waves and driving rain, pulling themselves onto the Triton, just as the boat's structural integrity was severely compromised. The storm raged around them, a furious farewell from the North Sea. Eleanor clutched the crystalline shard, its faint internal light a beacon in the chaos. They made it back to shore, battered but alive, just as the Triton finally gave way, succumbing to the tempest. Back on land, exhausted and exhilarated, the team faced a new storm, the media frenzy and the Ministry of Culture. With the tangible proof of the crystalline shard and the comprehensive 3D models and data from their expedition, Eleanor presented their findings. The initial skepticism was immense, bordering on outright dismissal. Mainstream archaeologists scoffed at the frequency manipulation theory, deeming it science fiction. The idea of an advanced ancient civilization in England, capable of intentionally sinking its own city, was too radical, too challenging to established historical narratives. But Eleanor, Ben, and Sarah were unyielding. They presented their evidence with scientific rigor, calmly answering questions and countering accusations. The sheer volume of data, the unprecedented preservation of the site, and most importantly, the tangible glowing shard, slowly began to chip away at the resistance. Sarah, with her linguistic breakthroughs on the tablet, offered compelling interpretations of the symbols, explaining the catastrophic event and the desperate, ultimately failed attempt at preservation. Ben's 3D models provided irrefutable visual proof of the town's impossible intactness. Over weeks, then months, the story of Britain's Atlantis began to spread beyond academic circles, capturing the public imagination. Documentary crews arrived, newspapers published lengthy features, and the small fishing village became an unlikely pilgrimage site. Eleanor, once a skeptic, became an unlikely advocate for a lost history, challenging conventional wisdom and pushing the boundaries of what was thought possible. The crystalline shard, now safely housed in a secure, climate-controlled vault, continued to hum faintly, a silent testament to a civilization that defied time. The mystery of their advanced technology remained, but the human story of their struggle, their ingenuity, and their tragic end finally resonated, an echo of Atlantis in the modern world, reminding humanity that history often holds more secrets than we dare to imagine. And that concludes the incredible journey into Britain's Atlantis. If you were captivated by this story of mystery, discovery, and human resilience, please consider subscribing to our channel for more thrilling narratives and explorations into the unknown.